talking about nostalgia. Back in my day, there was a movement. There was a movement that no one talks about nowadays. Back in my day, I'm 29 years old. During the 90s and the early 2000s, there was this anti-adult movement that was going on. It seemed like there were all these movies and cartoons that were coming out, and it was always like the kids were the smart ones. The kids were the ones that were underappreciated, didn't get the kind of respect that they deserved, weren't listened to, always made to feel like our opinions didn't really matter, like the adult opinions mattered. There were all these movies and cartoons and comic books that came out during the late 90s and the early 2000s, and as a kid watching these things, it was fucking inspiring. It was fucking inspiring. It was amazing. It was like a magical generational experience. I mean, this was like our Woodstock. The '90s generation. Those of us who were born during the early '90s know exactly what I'm talking about. All these movies and cartoons and stuff. And as I was growing up, like, I thought that school was corrupt. And when I do more research about school and other things like that, as I grow older, I still feel that way. It's not a sign of immaturity. It also doesn't take an adult, a full-grown adult, to realize how corrupt school is. You could have realized that when you were a teenager, but you got adults nowadays that still don't realize how corrupt school is, because most people just bend. They bend to society. They don't want to cause a ruckus. They don't want to say always how they really feel. They don't want to upset the apple cart. I complained. At least I complained. At least I had the wisdom to realize that it wasn't helpful to force children to learn things that they're going to resent learning, and then constantly reteaching them over and over and over again. It made it very strict, very nerve-wracking. It just wasn't a good thing. It wasn't a positive thing. A lot of movies that were around that time were doing stuff like that. Ash Ketchum. When I was growing up as a kid watching Pokemon, you see this young kid defeating all of these older people who were Pokemon masters, Pokemon trainers. And he was getting all the badges. And that was, as an adult, if you didn't grow up with watching the original Pokemon series when it came out, and it debuted in 1998, you wouldn't really feel this. But growing up, watching him, seeing him through the episodes get more badges and doing this, that was so inspirational. It was so amazing to see that happen. And here's a kid that does not have all his full skills yet, and he's defeating these full-blown adults. I guess I viewed it as like, oh, kids know things. Kids are smart too. Kids have potential too. They're wiser than the adults. They have more imagination than the adults. They're able to defeat them in battle. It was that kind of feeling that you got from seeing things like that. It wasn't just, oh, it's just some kid defeated the Pokemon Master. No, there was meaning to it. There was a deepness to it. And it may not have been that way put in there purposefully, but it still made me feel that way. And it made a lot of kids my age feel that way from watching that happening. The Kids Next Door was a series in the early 2000s that was so fucking great, and it was very comedic. I mean, it was over the top, this anti-authoritarian message of the kids against the adults. It was over the top in a very comedic tone, which is good, because now kids and adults can watch it and maybe take something from it, and the adults can learn to not take themselves so seriously, and the kids could maybe realize, oh, okay, there are nice adults. It's not all black and white, and there's a lot of silly things that happen in the show. At the same time, though, you can tell that this is a series that is very heavily inspired from childhood, from the way adults made you feel and the kids all band together and they form a group. It all comes down to the fact that they feel unappreciated. That was something that was so powerful about the kids next door. When you were a kid, you wanted there to be a real one, but you wanted the adults to understand how corrupt school was and certain aspects of parenting, but you didn't want to like annihilate the adults or bash them like the kids next door did. I mean, they didn't outright do that in the show, but you wanted to have something like that happen to adults in a kind of organized way where the kids would show the adults that, hey, you need to understand that we matter too. Because I think a lot of adults, I don't know if I can say most, I really don't know if I can, but a lot of adults think like kids are a lot smarter than adults think they are. That's I think a fact of life in my opinion. Holes was another movie that was a perfect example of adults don't listen. They constantly underestimate children or young people in general. And that's another perfect example. And Spy Kids was another example of this trend in pop culture. It just went beyond the angst to me. It went beyond, oh yeah, this is what the kids will like. To me, I felt like inspired from it, and it felt like a message to me. As I grew up, I vowed that when I became an adult, I wasn't going to allow the indoctrination of people in society to morph me into a cynical asshole who doesn't have an imagination, who constantly appreciates authority all the time. Here is in Spy Kids like 1 and 2, and I don't know about Spy Kids 3D, but I mean I liked it, but anyway, the Spy Kids movies, the original, like the first two, the kids show that they can kick ass, and they're kids, and that's just another example of this feeling. It was a fever pitch build up. I felt like eventually when my generation grew up, the 90s generation, the kids born during the 90s, that we were going to grow up and that we were going to, at least when we were in our 20s or when we were in our late teens, we were going to show the adults the way school should be, the way society should be when it comes to jobs and school. That we were going to show all these older people, hey, this is wrong the way society is, we need to change it. I thought we were going to be brave enough to do this. I thought this was going to happen. I thought there was going to be a kids revolution, but it never fucking happened. We gave up. We didn't fucking do it. We didn't go through with these ideas and fantasies and plans that we were going to show them the way, show them the light, have them realize that they're hurting us constantly. The continuation of over-authoritarian mindsets. In the original Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius movie, which came out before the show, by the way, I know a lot of young people don't realize that, but it's a great movie, and what happens in the movie when the aliens kidnap all the adults, and then all the kids are the only ones left on Earth, that was what you wanted when you were a kid. You wanted that to happen. You were like Jimmy and the rest of them. You hated school. That's what you wanted to happen. So the writing in that movie is fucking brilliant. I mean, the message is still good that, like, oh, our parents are assholes, but they still love us and care about us, and we love them even though they're flawed, so we want to go rescue them from the aliens, from the alien invaders. That's a good message. But at the end of the movie, when they rescue the adults, they come back to the planet Earth, all the kids, there should have been a scene where all the kids tell all the adults, we don't like the way school is. We don't like how this is. We don't like how that is. This should change, that should change, society should change. That scene didn't happen in the movie. The companies that make these movies, they build up all the kids to be the heroes, they hype them all up, and then by the end of the movie, or the show, or whatever, for some reason, the message just falls apart. Watching Jimmy Neutron, I thought that was the whole idea, that big concept in the film. Or at least a big aspect of the film was about that. Like, there should have been a scene like that at the very end. Some fucking bravery, some fucking balls. That's what I want to see. And I'd like to see it in a film that isn't an adult film. I mean, it can be, but why not have it be in a film that's marketed towards young teenagers? At the very least, or try to show the majority of parents that, or adults in society that, maybe we should change schools. We should change the way things are run. And it's not a maybe at this point. Good God, it's fucking 2021. It should have been, the school system should have been fixed and done better bajillions of years ago. Maybe back in like the 80s or some shit. As much as I love the Jimmy Neutron movie, it's a kind of defeatist movie. The ending, at least. Just because the kids realized that they needed the adults, that doesn't justify all the actions of the adults on society, on children. That doesn't mean that all the adults were right the whole time. That's not what that means. But that's what kind of the message of the movie is. Like, it builds you up all the way up and tears you back the fuck down. Oh, back down to reality, huh? Well, the reality is that there's a lot of adults that don't understand and don't realize that the school system's corrupted, society has corruption, there's something that should change here. That's the kind of feelings the kids had in the film towards the adults. But in the end, because the kids are vulnerable, they give up. They give in to the adults. That's the problem, is that they gave in. There's something defeatist about the ending of the movie, the finale. Just because they rescue the damn adults, all the parents, that doesn't mean that everything the parents did was all justified, and that the kids were all wrong the whole time in their complaints about the way the adults treated them. That's not what that means. In Captain Underpants, which I absolutely love, still love, and I'm a big fan, I have all the books, they use the hypno ring to control the principal of their school, Principal Prickly, and transform him into a superhero. That is so, like, imaginative, and there's like a deepness to it. Like Dave Pilkley, I loved him growing up as a kid because I was drawing my own comics when I was growing up. Super Patrick, hence the name of my channel. Anyway, and I was inspired by him because he was making these books and selling them with his superhero, Captain Underpants. And I was having my own comics at the time, I still am, of Super Patrick. But aside from that, you can tell that I read things about him in these books growing up. And he talked about how the adults would hate him drawing, and they would punish him, and they would send him to the principal's office all the time for ridiculous reasons. And he would draw comics of the adults parroting them. Hence, Captain Underpants was born through time out of that idea. So you can tell from reading Captain Underpants that there is this frustration with adults not taking young minds, young people seriously. I'm not saying that all children are fucking brilliant and know everything or anything like that, but kids have a smartness to them, and they are growing minds that can have their confidence destroyed through the system, the school system, through all this stuff. And it's great to be a kid, to have your imagination run wild. You think about a lot of things that adults don't give a shit about thinking about. I mean, it's complicated, but now, this might be a very cynical side of me saying this, but is there a sadness to Captain Underpants? A subtle sadness? Kids growing up, they can't get the fucking adults to listen to them. They can't fucking do it. So, the only way to really do it is to trick them and make a hypno ring to control the principal, or other adults for that matter. There's something a little sad there, isn't there? I mean, it's very funny, but there's like a subtle brilliance to it. And it's something that kids can relate to, and adults can relate to it too. And the jokes they had in the books. But it was also about all this other deep shit. This deep human shit going on here. The subtlety, the philosophy. I just think that schools shouldn't be super, super, super strict, and there should be a lot of time in classes where kids are allowed to learn whatever they want to learn, and there should be classes in high school that encourage children to teach children how to take care of their money, what their futures of jobs are going to be, instead of just constantly relearning subjects over and over again, the way it is with the whole fucking like waking up at 6, 7 in the morning and shit. It shouldn't feel so strict and intense. It doesn't prepare you for adulthood. It makes you loathe adulthood. It makes you not want to become an adult. That's what school does to most people. It doesn't do what people say school does to you. And I thought our generation, the 90s kids, I thought that we were going to be the ones to change it. That we were supposed to be the ones to change it. It was our destiny. But the new kids nowadays, the younger generation now, forget it. They love authority more than ever. Are you kidding? We fucking failed. We failed. We lost. And we failed and we gave up. It's just like that. There's like a sadness there. Because the young kids aren't going to do this. They're not going to have a revolution. But we had a spark. We had a moment. A glimmer in time. Where we could have done something when we grew up. We could have formed some kind of kids next door group. But it obviously would have been called something else. Something adult. Like Young Adults United or some shit. And it's like a council, and we become kind of politicians, and we go to schools, make speeches, and we're on the news, and we try to go to the White House. You know, just make a big stink about everything. Make a change, a revolution, something that every generation can relate to, and the older generations forgot that they can relate to it, or they gave up and didn't give a shit, and we did give a shit. We did care. There was a point in time where a lot of us cared a lot about this. And we fucking gave up. But anyway, I just thought I really needed to make this video. It was very, very, very important to me. I hope you all liked it. I hope you all enjoyed it. This is just my perspective from the age of 29, talking about my childhood, what things were like, what we were talking about, what we wished would happen in the future. The kids' revolution, man, it fucking never goddamn happened. It happened in our minds. It happened in some of our creations, some of our comics, some of our fantasies, cartoons, whatever have you, but it didn't fucking happen. What a bummer.